Hi, I'm Richard Vague with Tycos. Today we want to talk about the statistic we consider the most important bellwether in economic forecasting, the unsold housing inventory. This is not something we use to forecast what's going to happen next month or next quarter or even next year, but instead to assess the general health of the economy over the next, call it, 2 or 3 years. Stated simply, if the unsold housing inventory is too high, things are going to be slower than normal over the next year or two or more. And if that inventory is low, that's actually a wonderful fact. That means it's going to be hard for economic trends to be overly negative over the next couple of years. Trump's tariff recession notwithstanding. Let's examine why that's true. Why? Stated simply, it is because real estate is the largest factor in the economy. Real estate-related spending, including construction spending, is 18% of GDP, and it's the largest single component of GDP, well ahead of healthcare spending. And real estate debt, at a whopping $21 trillion, is by far the largest non-government component of total debt. In contrast, debt for the entire energy sector is a mere measly $1 trillion. And for those of you who pay attention to inventory levels, with excessive inventory being a problem, whether it's in retail or any other sector, unsold housing inventory is by far the largest cache of inventory in the entire economy at nearly $600 billion. Now, all the business headlines you see every day tie back rather directly to real estate. If utilities really do, in fact, need to massively increase their electricity generation because of artificial intelligence demands, you'll see that utility construction spending. If tariffs really are going to slow down trade, you'll see that in a slowdown of such things as warehouse construction spending. If those same tariffs really are going to bring a renaissance in U.S. manufacturing, you'll see that in factory construction spending. So back to unsold housing inventory itself. Let's look at the most famous recent example of this, the level leading up to the global financial crisis. In 2008, with the unwarranted exuberance of lenders and builders, unsold single-family home inventory levels reached a peak of 4 million homes. That's as compared to a historical level of, let's call it, 2 million homes, so double what had been appropriate over time. That's so large that even a blind man could have seen that was a huge problem, well, excluding, of course, Federal Reserve economists. As mentioned, a more normal level would have been about 2 million homes, and it took 4 long, painful years to work down that inventory to the normal 2 million level, and that required not building new homes and letting sales kind of absorb the excess. And while that was happening, there was essentially no room for builders to keep building. Why would they build more homes when there were millions sitting unsold? And so construction industry employment plunged and the economy with it. The key here is that builders would have been crazy to build no matter how low interest rates were. That's 100% of the reason why low interest rates, though helpful to borrowers in distress, did not revive the economy. Those builders had to wait all the years it took for the backlog of inventory to get sold or plowed under to start building at normal levels again, and low interest rates really did not matter in terms of the point that new construction began. Today we have somewhat of the opposite problem. Inventory levels are still a bit under the level needed for buyers to have the options and choices they want. Depending on location, potential buyers often can't find homes to buy, but builders are hard pressed to build to fill that need because their interest costs are too high relative to the levels of the past 15 or so years. Given high interest rates, it's more difficult for builders to build new homes and for buyers to buy new homes. So the level of both new construction and home purchases chug along at moderate to low levels. The good news here is that lower rates, if we ever get them, will in fact boost construction and sales. That's the lever that the Fed has if things get soft otherwise. It's in effect the ace the Fed has up its sleeve. Today, the data on all these aspects of real estate we just touched on, are chugging along at, let's call it, lackluster levels. Construction spending is middle of the road by historical standards. Real estate debt to GDP is soft when viewed as a percent of GDP, in spite of what headlines often misleadingly say. Household mortgage loans to GDP have actually been trending down since the global financial crisis, so there's no encouraging news there, and commercial real estate debt has been flat for, let's call it, 15 years. But, as mentioned, the housing inventory, the unsold housing inventory remains low, which means that home building will rebound when interest rates are lowered. If this inventory is actually climbing a little bit at the moment, but not so much because new houses are being built, you can see those levels are still relatively flat, but because sales remain slow. Here we see this statistic adjusted for population, and you can see inventory levels look even lower by historical standards when viewed this way. So that's the state of real estate viewed from the 60,000 foot level at the moment. Soft, but poised to rebound the moment interest rates start to decline. Of course, there is a wild card that could disrupt that, and that's, of course, tariffs. And since we don't know where tariffs will finally end up, we can't predict their impact. Suffice to say, even moderately higher tariffs will bring some level of slowdown, which will likely bring interest rates down. And if that slowdown is mild, real estate levels, spending, construction will hold up. But if that tariff and DOGE-induced slowdown is deeper, all bets are off, and real estate itself will begin to fall, bringing a broader level of economic pain. That's it for this week. Thanks.